Olin Mills came in. Yes. Well, thank God Olin Mills isn't coming, but we've got Mary. So no pressure, no pressure. But just don't, I would love it. Just make us do this. Even if you don't want your photo taken, it's so helpful for us because it helps on Realm for us to be able to put faces to names, and it will be very helpful to us. So this is fall. It's us getting back together with Realm and getting our photos taken. So, hey, I love the text, the note up here. It says, hospitality needs help. It's almost like they need a therapist or something. I don't know where it is, but I thought it was very funny. Hospitality. The Garden's hospitality team needs help. So I don't know what else to say. If you're emotionally insecure, come join. No, I'm just joking. So join the hospitality team because we need help. All right. Communion. Today we're sharing Holy Communion. You don't have to be a member of the Garden or any church to share in this feast. You need just listen to the message. You need just figure out how. You need a little more spirit and love in your life, and you can be part of it. You have communion options here today. You can sit where you are and take the gluten-free. You can come forth, walk up this way, and walk out that way. We'll be serving that way. And then my friend Tom is going to serve the VIPs who wish to remain seated but would like communion with the fresh challah bread. So there's lots of different options. So at communion, we have 2 VIPs up here. If you feel like a VIP, just raise your hand, and you can have communion that way. Just real quick, we've been praying for Patty's and Michael's brother, David, who passed away this week. So Patty, we love you so much, and I'm so sorry. It's hard to lose those brothers. And he's at the Garden this morning. He's watching. So I love you both, and I'm so sorry for your loss. And I just heard Joyce is doing better. And Dennis is amazing. That's what I'm going to leave it at, all right? Dennis is amazing. So we're blessed with a really loving and caring community. Before we move on, in light of working 9 to 5 and in getting ready for Leanne's share today of our story, I want you to go ahead and look at the bulletin that has our scripture text in it. Throughout the Old and New Testament, we're reminded of the power of working hard. There's nothing wrong with working hard. So let's go ahead, and if you want to say it out loud with me, you can. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. That's Ecclesiastes, Old Testament, lots of important lessons in Ecclesiastes. And then here from Paul's letter to the Colossians, I love this one too. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. Leanne's going to share a special story with us today called Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel.
Yay!
Yay!
So woohoo! Thank you, Tony. For some reason, someone upstairs, not God, his name is
A little closer
up there, he knows who I'm talking about, said, I've condensed the story because it has a lot of repetition. And I said, yes, because it's a children's book. And he said, well, the garden is smarter than the typical child. And I said, okay. That's fine, but it does take anywhere between 6 times of telling a story to 600 times saying the same thing for children to understand. I'm not going to say this story 600 times, just once. So pay attention. Ready? All right, so Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. Mike Mulligan had a steam shovel, a beautiful red steam shovel. Her name was Marianne. Mike and Marianne had been digging together for years and years. It was Mike Mulligan and Marianne and some others, who dug the great canals for the big boats to sail through. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who lowered the hills and straightened the curves to make long highways for the automobiles. It was Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann and some others who dug the deep holes for the cellars of the tall skyscrapers in the big cities. When people used to stop and watch them, Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann used to dig a little faster and a little better. Then along came the new gasoline shovels and the new electric shovels and the new diesel motor shovels. And it took all the jobs away from the steam shovels. Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann were very sad. All the other steam shovels were being sold for junk, but Mike loved Mary Ann. He couldn't do that to her. Then one day, Mike read in a newspaper that a town called Popperville was going to build a new town hall. We're going to dig the cellar of that town hall, said Mike to Mary Ann, and they started off. They left the canals and the highways and the big cities where no one wanted them anymore and went to the country. They crawled along slowly till they came to the little town of Popperville. When they got there, Mike Mulligan spoke to Henry B. Swap, one of the selectmen. I heard, he said, that you are going to build a new town hall. Mary Ann and I will dig the cellar for you in just one day. What? Said Henry B. Swap. It would take 100 men at least a week. Sure, said Mike, but Mary Ann can dig as much as a day as 100 men in 1 week, though he wasn't quite sure that was true. Then he added, if we can't do it, you don't have to pay us. Henry B. Swap thought that this would be easy way to get part of the cellar dug for nothing, so he smiled a rather mean way and gave the job to Mike and Mary Ann. They started in the early morning. Soon a little boy came along. Do you think you'll be finished by sundown? He asked to Mike Mulligan. Sure, said Mike, if you stay and watch us, because we always work faster and better when someone is watching. So the little boy stayed and he watched. Then Mrs. McGillicuddy, sorry, I knew I was going to trip over that one. Then Mrs. McGillicuddy, Henry B. Swap, and the town constable came over to see what was happening. They stayed to watch. Mike and Mary Ann dug a little faster and a little better. This gave the little boy an idea. He ran off and told the postman, the telegraph boy, the milkman, the doctor, the farmer and his family, and they all stopped and watched. Clang, 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 the fire department had seen the smoke and thought that there was a huge fire. So they stayed to watch. When they heard that the fire engine, the children from across the street in the school couldn't keep their eyes on their lessons. So the teacher called a long recess, and the whole school came out to watch. That made Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann dig still faster and still better. Never had Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann has had so many people watch them. Never had they dug so fast and so well. Then suddenly, it was quiet. Slowly, the dirt settled down. The smoke and the steam cleared away, and there was a cellar that was all finished. The sun was just going down beyond the hills. Hooray, shouted the people. Hooray for Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. They have dug the cellar in just one day. Suddenly, the boy said, how are you going to get out? Henry B. Swap smiled a rather mean smile. Mike Mulligan looked around. There was 4 corners, 4 walls. This had nothing like this have ever happened to him or Mary Ann before, and they didn't know what to do. Everybody started talking at once, and everybody had a different idea, and everybody thought that his idea was the best. Then Henry B. Swap said the job isn't finished because Mary Ann isn't out of the cellar, so Mike Mulligan won't get paid. And he smiled again in a rather mean way. Now, the little boy, who had been keeping very quiet, well, that's unusual, but anyway, he was keeping very quiet, had another good idea. He said, why couldn't we leave Mary Ann in the cellar and build the new town around her? Let her be the furnace for the new town hall, and let Mike Mulligan be the janitor. Then you wouldn't have to buy a new furnace. And we could pay Mike Mulligan for digging the cellar in just one day. Why not? Said Henry B. Swap. And he smiled in a way that was not quite as mean. Why not? Said the townspeople. Why not? Said Mike Mulligan. So it was decided, and everybody was happy. They built a new town hall right over Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann. Every day, the little boy goes over to see Mike Mulligan and Mary Ann, and Mrs. McGillicuddy makes him nice hot apple pies. As for Henry B. Swap, he spends most of his time in the cellar with the new town hall, listening to the stories that Mike Mulligan has to tell and smiling in a way that wasn't so mean at all. Now, when you go to Poplarville, make sure that you go down in the cellar of the new hall. There you'll see Mike Mulligan, Mary Ann, beside him, warming up the meetings in the new town hall.
Outstanding.
All right, kids, let's go across to room 216.
Just real quick before we move into service, we've had some troubles. And we had a meeting last week, and we're on our way to solving those troubles. But what makes me really nervous about both screens being out now is that's like a $400 problem, right? They keep, oh, that one's working. Okay, so this is only a $200 problem. So, anyway, I'm not nervous about it. I'm not nervous. We're figuring it out, aren't we, Doran? You demand. All right, so today we're talking about Labor Day weekend, hard work, and what it takes to truly experience the love of God through all the changes in life. We are so glad that you're here.
Good morning, gardeners. Please join me in the universal words of welcome. Shalom. Shalom. Namaste. Peace. Tomorrow is Labor Day, the day when workers are celebrated and is the unofficial end of summer. The last few years has made me appreciate all type of workers, whether it's the workers stocking the shelves or the cashiers that check you out, or the individuals ordering the supplies to stock those shelves, or the managers who make it all work. Jesus understood this by having his meals and spent a lot of time with all types of people. Let us appreciate our fellow man and realize that we all have important parts to play in society. Enjoy the holiday. Let us pray. Lord, thank you for the many blessings you have given us. I pray for Patty Reed and her family in their time of sorrow at the death of her brother. I pray for the recovery of David Bradley and Judy Conley. I pray for the sick and injured that you will heal them. I pray for the victims of the Maui fires, the hurricanes, and other disasters, that you will give them strength and support during their crises. Please give us the love and compassion for our fellow man during these difficult times. In Jesus' name, amen. The ministry of the garden is only made possible through your gifts. Through your generosity, we share in the big and little gives, have meaningful services, and have a facility to share in community. If you can give $1 or $2, no worries. If you can't give $1 or $2, no worries. Your presence in this community and giving heart make the garden grow.
Now the seats are all empty. Let the roadies take the stage. Pack it up and tear it down. They're the first to come and the last to leave, working for that minimum wage. They'll set it up in another town. Tonight the people were so fine. They waited there in line, and when they got up on their feet, they made the show. And that was sweet, but I can hear the sound, slamming doors and folding chairs. That's a sound they'll never know. Roll them cases out and lift them amps. Haul them trusses down and get them up them ramps. 'Cause when it comes to moving me, you guys are the champs. But when that last guitar's been packed away, you know that I still want to play. So just make sure you got it all set to go before you come for my piano. Chicago or Detroit I don't know. We do so many shows in a row, and these towns all look the same. We just pass the time in the hotel rooms and wander around backstage till those lights come up and we hear that crowd and remember why we came. Country and western on the bus. We got R&B. We got disco and 8 tracks and cassettes in stereo. We got rural scenes and magazines, and we got truckers on the CB, and we got Richard Pryor on the video. We got time to think of the ones we love while the miles roll away. The only time that seems too short is the time we get to play. People, you got the power over what we do. You can sit there and wait, or you can pull us through. Come along, sing that song. Can't go wrong, 'cause when that morning sun comes beating down, you're gonna wake up in your town, but we'll be scheduled to appear 1,000 miles away from here. So people stay just a little bit longer. We wanna play just a little bit longer. Ooh, now the garden don't mind, and Carolyn don't mind. If we take a little time, leave it all behind and sing one more song. Won't you stay just a little bit? A little bit longer. I said, please, 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 just stay a little bit more. Now the garden don't mind, Carolyn and Doran don't mind. If we take a little time and leave this all behind, sing one more song.
You should think about doing this for a living, you know? You're pretty good at it. I want to note something. So isn't that a beautiful song that Jackson Browne wrote for his roadies? You know who the garden roadies are up here? These 3 guys. And Doran. They are here on Sunday morning. What time do you get here? 7 a.m. They get here at 7 a.m. And then they are the roadies who take it all out. And I also, though, want to note that there are other roadies in the garden that there are plenty of you still here to hear us stacking up chairs. And I am so thankful for all the roadies who help with this room every week. It's a beautiful way to share in community, and for that, I am thankful. So, God, we're blessed. If I were smart, I'd just sit down. But I'm not smart. Those scripture texts I just love, right? Because all of those songs, and the last one you'll hear too, you're just going to be on fire, are all about the work we do, right? And I love that we're reminded in both and the New Testaments that work is just a part of this life. But God also gives us the opportunity to eat, drink, and be merry, and to realize that if we live our lives for God, it all is a little bit easier. I love what Paul says. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. I just love that. I really want to thank the creative team for this great challenge for me, because I have to tell you, I haven't picked up children's books for a really, really long time. And not only did I pick up some books, but I also became reacquainted with books that I don't think I have looked at since I was a little teeny kid. Now, there is a lot of wisdom in children's books for both adults and children. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some real zingers out there, too, that we wouldn't touch. But the classics speak throughout the ages. I think going back and looking at the classics has been just really valuable for me. I see how the authors have found a way to speak to the adults and the children. And today we're looking at Virginia Lee Burton. Now, she wrote Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel in 1939, when the U.S. was clawing itself out of the Great Depression. It's a story about the working class man and a steam shovel that both find themselves increasingly unnecessary in the marketplace. And for them, they realize, and with Mr. Schmuggerville, or whatever his name is, that it's all about the bottom line, that they don't really matter anymore. Amazing how coming out of a season where work was hard to find and caring for your family was serious business. My mother will talk about life at the height of the Depression when they did not have enough to eat every night. Mothers knew this, fathers knew this, and that's where she writes this story, where Virginia, writes this story. She writes it in such a way that it is full of hope, but you also pick up on the anxiety and on the sadness of the story as well. Yet in the end, they find their possibilities for the future in a child. There is always possibility. I learned this past week that this story literally was finished when a child got involved in Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel. A little boy helped write the end of that story. See, Virginia had written to the point where Mike and Marianne were stuck, literally had dug themselves a hole and they couldn't get out. And it just so happened that she was having one of those cool dinner parties with friends. She had gone to their house, and she decided at the table to ask this little boy what she might do. Now, this is all written up. It was written up in the Boston Globe in 2006. And that little boy was 87 years old at that time, and his name was Dickie Birkenbush. Never met an 87-year-old Dickie. Dickie Birkenbush. And he lived his whole life in this town where she lived as well, West Newbury. And it's a little town on the edge of Boston. Dickie Birkenbush had a very clear memory of being a child and being dragged off to this dinner party with his parents. He did not want to be there. They were all sitting around the table with this friend just chatting away, which was Ginny. And he was so bored, all he wanted was to be excused from the table. But then she mentioned Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel, and that she had literally dug them into a hole and she didn't know what to do. The book project was literally shelved. Well, Dickie thought about it for a minute. He thought about the garage that he and his dad worked in. It was a garage that had a steam-operated boiler that reminded him of Mary Ann. He suggested to Virginia Lee Burton that Mary Ann could be converted into a boiler for the town hall basement. Burton loved this idea so much that she used it in the book, and then she even credits little Dickie throughout the book. If you remember the book, there's Dickie. That's what I was trying to show earlier. He's so cute. So she gives him credit as well, which I really love, that she credited him throughout the story. Now, what's interesting is the impact this had on Dickie's life, that she said, yes, Dickie, that's how we're going to end the book. And she had him engaged in the whole process. And there was something about empowering that little boy that he believes changed his life. In fact, he became the citizen's citizen. He was a firefighter for many, many years, and even during those 37 years as a firefighter, as 10 years, he also worked as a policeman. And then he was so committed to his town that they made him a selectman, which if you're from the East, you probably know what that means. That's a government official, selectman. He lived his whole life celebrating and sharing in community, and he took it right back to that moment that Ginny gave him personhood and gave him a voice in a story. Perhaps that's what I've been reminded of in this children's literature series. I'm reminded that even from a little teeny age, we're created with a divine purpose and meaning. And in a world where there is a new way of being, many of us, from that little person to becoming a big person, lose sight of that. We get really confused. We think that life is really all about the toil, because the truth is not everybody loves the work that they do. And when we end up in these jobs that we don't necessarily want, what's really amazing is that as the landscape changes, oftentimes you get nervous that you aren't going to have a job anymore. You get nervous and you start thinking you are your job. Do you know what? See what I'm getting to here? You think that I am. You're all like, nope, not there yet. Okay. I love that. I love the blank stare. So you start thinking, how many of you, that I know that we have a few retired people here, how many of you hated a job that you had at one point? Look at them all. I love you so much. I mean, I don't love that you hated your job. I think that's terrible that you hated your jobs. But then what's so interesting is when that becomes endangered, then you're afraid of losing something you hate. It's just really jacked up, isn't it? It really is. So what Dickie was able to do that maybe some of us didn't have was he was reminded as a little teeny boy that he was here for a reason. It was to help with that book, and then it was to help care for his community, and he kept his eye on that prize the whole time. Not all of us are that lucky, I guess, or that focused on what it is that we want to do. Many of us leave, we go to college, we try this job, we try that job, and they say kids today will have a bunch of different jobs and careers before they figure it all out. And what's so interesting is, guess what? This is nothing new. From the beginning of time, the landscape of life has changed, and it continues to change. And we continue to have jobs that still have a place in this world, but then sometimes there are jobs that no longer have a place in this world. I have this great book, and it was given to me long before I was a minister, and it's called 50 Jobs Worse Than Yours. I loved this book. Here are a few jobs that are no longer in existence that I thought you might be interested in. Leech collectors and keepers. Doctors needed leeches. There was bloodletting that needed to happen. And so the leech keepers would go out and get the leeches, and they'd bring them to the doctors. And when the doctors were done, they'd give them back to the leech keepers. And the leech keepers would hang on to them until a little more bloodletting was needed. They had to care for them in between gigs. How about this one? The knocker-upper. There literally was, in England, a knocker-upper. Look at them all. Okay. Prior to alarm clocks, there was somebody who would come around and knock on your door until you woke up. The knocker-upper. Only at the garden would people go there. You all went right there immediately. Now, I've heard this to be true, and in my book, it actually is true. The official taster. And I thought it was just for kings. But actually, wealthy people hired tasters. Now, it was their job to taste the food before a wealthy person or a king or somebody ate it. Because if it had been poisoned, then the king would know. That was not a real popular job. But you know what? Somebody did take that job. It's amazing to me. There were scissor grinders and ice cutters. There were ice deliverers and milkmen. Some of us remember milkmen. There were lamp lighters, not to mention soda jerks. That's funny now, isn't it? What do you do for a living? I'm a soda jerk. Sit down there. I'm going to jerk you a soda right now. That is not the theme I was going for in this message. God, I'm really sorry. I know we'll talk about this someday, but not today. And then perhaps elevator operators. So now as I continue on, do you notice that these are things that maybe some of us do recognize? Remember elevator operators? What floor, sir? Don't you touch that dial. Don't you touch that button. I got it. You know, if we still had elevator operators, I think COVID would not have hit us so hard. Because it'd just be one guy pressing the buttons. Not all of us, right? It would just be that one guy. But we got rid of them too. And what about movie projectionists? It was a really special, important position. Movie projectionist. Okay, here's one of my favorites. Video store clerk. Yeah. VHS maker. And what about the good old photomat? Do you remember the photomat? We would put these people in these little teeny buildings and we would drop off our film and say, good luck with that, and drive on. And then when we would drive through the other way and they'd say, here are your beautiful pictures. What a changing world we live in, right? It's amazing to me how life changes and how things change. Well, these are just a few of the jobs in the world that no longer exist. Some of those positions, like Mary Ann, found a new place. I mean, I could imagine that the leech guy gave way to caring for people's pets, maybe. I don't know. And then, what about food tasters? Could be modern-day chefs. Who knows? Lamplighters could be those electrical workers that have made their way down south to help those people after that hurricane. See, we find a way to work it all out. I'm not quite sure what's happened to the photomat people. But I'm sure they have an iPhone and are taking photos for themselves. And so it goes, and so it goes. See, these are all situations where people like Mike and Mary Ann had to find a new way because they had no control over the advancements in society. They had no control over what was happening, and they had to find a way to work through a really tough situation. Now, when you read that book, and I encourage you to get it. If you don't have one in your house for your grandkids, get it. You can get on that awful Amazon place for like $8 or something. And in it, you can see the hardship of a community. You really can. You can see the challenge of a changing landscape. You can see the challenge of a community trying to figure out how to make their way through life. It's really incredible. She's written others as well. Another one called The Little House, and another one called Life Story. Throughout these, Virginia reflects the true beauty of living in a country that's gone through a very difficult time and worked their way out of that hole. She makes it clear how you do this. You do it by listening to your children. You do it by joining together as a community. And you do so by just loving each other and being reminded that we all have a purpose and meaning here in life. I love the curmudgeon. I love that she puts the guy in the story that says, no, it's all about the bottom line. We still have it's all about the bottom line guy. And not only do we still have it's all about the bottom line guy, but those bottom line guys can have their hearts changed as well. With our changing landscape, and yes, like 3.5% of the population having 1,000,000% of the wealth, you see in most of these organizations a desire to make a difference in the world. You see it. And that's what we have to hang on to. You have to not think about the billions and billions of dollars that are going to a teeny tiny group of people. Don't think about that. Think about what can be done and what is being done. You look around the world today, we really kind of have dug ourselves a hole. We have dug a hole. I mean, when you look at the environment, it's a scary thing, isn't it? We have dug a hole with our environment. When you look at the way we care for our children, we have dug a hole. We made it somebody else's problem. When we look at how we work alone, in a house, all by ourselves, we kind of dig a hole. What Ginny reminds us, what Marianne reminds us, what Mike reminds us is when you dig a hole, you ask for help. When you dig a hole, you have a willingness to have the tough conversations with the people around you. When you dig a hole, the only way out of that hole is together. I say this because we don't do this anymore. We don't talk to each other about the problems we have in life and the struggles that we're having because it might not make us look like we got it going on. The church has got to step up and create a place where we can talk to each other about bills that can't be paid, about rent that isn't working out, about grandkids that are addicted, about, you see what I'm getting to? We have to find a way to talk to each other about these things, our individual holes. And we need a community of people around us to help us out of that hole. Today, as we come to this communion table, I want to encourage all of you to be mindful of the hole that you've dug for yourself in your own life, of the hole you can't seem to find your way out of. Come on, there's something in all of our lives that's just a little bit of a challenge. Maybe it's not talking to your partner as much as you should be. Maybe it's not giving to causes that are important to you. Maybe it's not working through the feelings of the person who's standing on the side of the road who needs some help. We all dig these holes. Anytime you end up with this guilt and shame hanging around you, that's a hole you've dug, and there is a way out of it. First is to remember that that puts darkness all over you, and the only way out of that darkness is to ask for help, and you start up there. You name and claim whatever that pain is, whatever that difficulty is, and then you're reminded, oh yeah, the spark of your spirit is within me, and I can make my way out of this hole. Yes, I'm forgiven, I'm loved, and I'm supposed to be here. Then you look around at the people who have gathered with you, and you say, you know what, I dug myself a hole, and I need your help. Let's find ways to help and to care for one another, and to help reach in and help each other out of these difficult places. The only way we can do that is to be real with one another. We have no control over a changing landscape, but we do have control over some things. And that's remembering you've been born with a divine purpose and meaning. That indeed we look to our children for answers about the future. And finally, we have a community of support that can help us through anything. As you come to the communion table today, what is it that's putting a little darkness in your life? I have no idea what it is, but you do, and God does. And all you have to do as you prepare for this meal is look around you and say, this is the hole I've dug myself into. Name and claim it. Figure out what it is. And then say, God, help me out of this hole. And guess what? God will. God will. Then ask God to open your ears to hear the voices of children. And I have to tell you, for some of us, the voices of children are these generations that we do not understand. More so a reason to listen. More so a reason to listen. Because the landscape has changed, and the way we did things is not the way that they do things. And you can love them even when they're doing them wrong. I'm just joking. They're not doing it wrong. You can love them. You can love them through that. You get it? That's what communion's about. It's not this, first Sunday of the month thing. It is a feast that we believe can change us because it's a symbolic feast that reminds us that we're loved without condition, that there is no darkness in this world that overcomes us, and that God is always working through us and the people God puts around us to transform this world in positive ways. As I said before, all who are here are invited to partake in Holy Communion. You don't have to be a member of the Garden or any church. You need only be willing to get out of the holes that you've created for yourself, and you've created the stuff that goes on. I'm sorry, I can't. I was just going to say, I can't pump that thing. Lord have mercy. So as we prepare for communion, I want to encourage us all to be mindful that this feast can change you. It will make you a different person. You just have to believe it. You have to believe that you hope greater than it. You have a hope and a love greater than a changing landscape. We are the place of choices today. You have lots of choices. At your seat is gluten-free. And if you like cardboard, that's the communion for you. If you prefer challah, and my friends who are gluten-free, I really am sorry. I really am. That wasn't very nice. That was not very nice. But it's true. So, we're going to have communion in 3 different ways. You can have it at your seat. If you choose to come up and you've had gluten-free, just ask for a blessing and we'll give you a blessing. Tom is going to hit the VIPs. If you don't feel like coming up, you just sit right where you are and you raise your hand like this. He has been the taster. Everything is fine. Dennis and I will be up front. We invite you to take a piece of bread from the loaf. Now keep in mind, you only touch your bread. Don't touch the rest of the bread. Just touch your bread. Dip it into the cup, partake, and then return to your seats for prayer and reflection. You come up this way, and you leave that way. All right? And if anybody is a VIP who raises their hand, so that's, yep, we got them. So, we remember on the night that Jesus was betrayed, he gathered with his disciples in a large upper room. He took bread and lifted it to heaven and gave thanks to God, and then he broke it. He gave it to his disciples, he gave it to his friends, and he said, "Take and eat of this, all of you. This is my body, which is given for you. As often as you eat bread, remember me and my love for you." Jesus also took the cup, lifted it to heaven, and gave thanks to God. Then he gave it to his friends, all of his friends. It was grape juice. And said, "Take and drink of this, all of you. This is my blood poured out for you and for many for the forgiveness of sins. As often as you drink, remember me and my love for you." For these gifts, let us pray. God of grace and love, we don't come to this table knowing the future. We come here confused and overwhelmed by a changing landscape. We come here often digging holes for ourselves. But this is the place we find direction. Give us the courage to name and claim that which we can no longer bear. And help us indeed to reach out to you to be reminded that you have created us with meaning. Help us to look to our children. Help us to look to our community for the help we need. Amen. All who are here are invited to partake. Just raise your hands. We'll get you. The rest, come on forth. you are on solid ground. The world around you is changing, but you have been reminded that you are loved without condition, that you are made new, that you are whole, and that God has created you with a divine purpose and meaning. Join in community and celebrate just that. And look to the children for our direction through a changing landscape. Before you go in peace, Conversations with Carolyn does happen today. You're welcome to join us over there. And then also, if you're interested in making the garden your church home, just see me, and we'll have you join us on whatever Sunday that is. So go now in peace, and may the love of our God be yours today, tomorrow, and forevermore. Amen. Oh, wait! We have one more song! Michael Clark.
Thank you.
Doran and the mics. Nice. And Abby. Very nice. Hey, go enjoy your Labor Day. Or come to Conversations with Carolyn. Or